Welcome. I'm the Parliament Raven. Welcome. Pull up a seat. Pour yourself a cup of tea. My name's Jason, and I'm the Parliament Raven. Today's episode is dedicated to William. You know who you are. Why weren't unicorns on the Ark? This episode came about, and it was supposed to go into a separate podcast called the Omega Files, but that'll probably be a separate series here on the Gravitos channel on YouTube and a sub folder on the Parliament Raven on the podcast channels. But why weren't unicorns on the Ark? Again, this was, man, I totally keep going off left or right. But this was brought up by a young gentleman who asked me that question while I was writing my book here in my city at a coffee shop. And I did a huge, gigantic, deep dive. I mean, really, because I couldn't answer. I was sitting there, couldn't answer the question, and I thought it was a great question. We see unicorns? And for those of you who know me as a historian, you know that I'm going to tell you dragons are real, and I'm going to say you can go to the museum and see them. In the 1860s, they changed the name of those giant lizards to dinosaurs. And yes, there's a difference between a dinosaur and a bird. And yes, we definitely have some bone issues and art issues, but that is for other influencing podcasts and channels. There's definitely some stuff in creation science that would blow your mind, especially in the art area. But I'm not here to fight over that or discuss that. We are here to talk about the unicorn, the battle beast of kings and of ancient legend. Where did they come from? Dun, 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 dun. I'm looking around, right? So, what if I told you that in the King James Version, you will find the word for that we translate into unicorn? The word is Re'em, and there's continual argument over what it means, and we will get to that section of the podcast, but I'm looking at my notes, and I really want to start off in the Bible. All right. Opening the Bible, Job 39:9. Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee, or abide by thy crib? Cast thou blind the unicorn with a band in the furrow, or will he harrow the valley after thee? But that's the King James Version. So let's take a look at what the English Standard Version, this is the version I normally go to. It says, is the wild ox willing to serve you? Will he spend the night at your manger? Can you bind him in a furrow with ropes, or will he harrow you the valley? So Re'em has two translations in the word, and there's 9 times it's used. And depending on the translator and how old the translation text is, King James, looking at you, buddy, the word is either ox or unicorn. So there's 2 possible meanings for it, and both the Re'em and the unicorn are both considered extinct. Well, I mean, the unicorn's not even considered real. We'll get to that. But the ox in which they're referring to is a type of ox that no longer exists in the world. Okay, so we're going to peel back into some more folklore and history about the unicorn. And we're going to start in Hebrew folklore with the Re'em and the King Og of Bashan and the Ark. And I'll explain some of this to you as we go along. The Midrash and the Batfra 74b, the Re'em is a giant ox too massive to fit in the ark, or a giant unicorn too massive to fit in the ark. King Og of Bashan, the giant Nephilim, who would later be a Nephilim king, was also too large. Noah being commanded to gain two of each kind needed Og to capture a unicorn so that they could continue on. Og was only able to catch one as big as he was, and it was tied to the ark during the flood, and he would give food to the unicorn and to the king of to who later would be King Bashan, the giant Og. And it's a funny thought that to have a floating unicorn and a giant next to the ark. This, of course, is folklore. Now, what's interesting is the Ram, or the unicorn, in that story is an even older folklore, saying that there's only two of them at any one time. They would mate and have one or two, and then the parents would die off. They were huge, gigantic beasts as the size of giants. Okay, that's another folklore about the unicorn. Not the unicorn you grew up with, not your mom's unicorn from her Peachy folder or Trapper Keeper, right? So the reference I'm making is in Genesis 6:19-20. There shall be male and female of birds according to their kind, and animals according to their kind, and every creepy thing according to their kind. Bugs are the creepy things. Ew. Right? And you will sort them and keep them alive. King Og, on the other hand, was a giant. Later on, we find out in Deuteronomy 3:11, this is the description of Og. For King Og of Bashan was left the remnant of the Rephaim. The Rephaim are a tribe of giants. Okay? Keeping with me, I know giants is completely off topic, but it has to deal with unicorns right now. His bed was a bed of iron. He is not a Rehoboam or an Ammonite. It was 9 cubits was its length, 4 cubits was its breadth, and according to the common cubit. Don't ask me about cubits. There's plenty of topics on that. And there's 2 different types of cubits, by the way. All right, let's move on. The ancient unicorn, according to historical text, there are people throughout time who've talked about unicorns. William. C.S.T.'s The Greek talked about a wild donkey with one horn from India. Pliny the Elder, Pliny the Elder was a monk, well known. There is a well-known beer that my brother-in-law likes to drink by the same name with his picture on it or likeness. He said the creature is with a stag's head, an elephant's feet, a boar's tail, and one horn. Sounds like a chimera to me. So I'll repeat that. A stag's head, an elephant's feet, a boar's tail, and one horn. Kind of sounds like a rhinoceros to me in that one. The descriptions of real animals are like, of course, the Indian rhinoceros, the Arabian oryx, and I don't know if I can say this one, the Elasmotherium. Let me try that again. Elasmotherium, which is a giant extinct rhino. All right. In the Middle Ages, in the medieval bestiaries, unicorns were considered pure and fierce, tameable only by those who are pure and fierce. That means virgins. It wasn't always ladies. There were young men too, as long as they had not got married or copulated. They were pure. Allegorically, the pureness represents, in the Catholic Church at least, for the pure chaste virgin would be Mary, and the unicorn, for all better purposes, is a symbolism for Christ, which I find to be very strange, which is why you would see them also on coat of arms. Modern science versus the myth. What are we going to look for? What are we going to find? So far, we haven't found any bones, right? Of course, some people can claim that these horns were grounded up and taken for their medicinal purposes throughout the Middle Ages. At one time, narwhals were considered the unicorns of the sea. Of course, we know that giant tooth is not a horn. No evidence of a horse with a horn has ever been found in the recorded history. Not a fossil, not a bone, not a thing. But that isn't to say that they weren't all ground up and used or found. But we still have yet to find anything. And who is to say what's underneath all the ice? Of course, medieval Europe took narwhal tusks as unicorn's horns. They were sold on the market for rare. I need to stop this. Hold on. Oh, rare medicinal healing relics. So why weren't they on the ark? I have a few reasons. Unicorns were, as we imagine today, are mythological. Ram was either a wild ox, but not a horse with a horn. The ark preserved all real kinds of creatures. Not to mention mystical spiritual creatures. The Bible and extracurricular text do not mention unicorns. It's a bad translation. Jewish folklore addresses these more symbolically, like the Leviathan and the Behemoth. That's another one for the Omega Files. Unicorns serve symbolistic purposes: purity, strength, mystery, not a biological role. Why would a horse have a horn? I mean, yeah, they could fight each other, but none of them are going to survive to replicate. And maybe that's it. Maybe they killed each other off during mating practices, and none of their bones are left. They all rotted. They didn't no fossilization. Okay. So what does this all teach us? Translations matter. Unicorns in the Bible. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool thought. The Simpsons have have them eating the unicorn at that time. Myth and faith coexist, but must be distinguished. What is myth and what is actual faith? It's cool to think that this creature exists, and I would hope that somebody out there can prove me wrong and find a complete skeleton of a unicorn. Some final thoughts. Biblical unicorns are really kind of non-existent. Yeah, if you really like the word in your translation, go to that old King James. Remember that we want to meet where science and theology come together. String theory episode. You can take a look at that. Final takeaway: the unicorn may have not made it to the ark, but it left a legacy in our language, our faith, and our symbolism. Continue to explore that, if you will. If you think you have more information on the unicorn, that I missed something, that I misrepresented the unicorn, put it in the comments below. Join the Facebook and tell me that I need to do a second episode on unicorns. And I might do a second episode on unicorns. All right. Till then, pour yourself another cup of tea, and I'll see you next time. Like, subscribe, leave a good comment. Thanks for visiting the Parliament. If you want to know about Gravitas coaching, please visit gravitas.co. It's also where we host the Parliament. Join the conversation on Facebook at the Parliament Raven Podcast. Last but not least, the intro and outro music credits. Intro music by Russ Budgeon and outro music by Sarnav Aravistov.